Well, one down, 12 more to go. Back-to-backs, that is. Specifically, I think most people focused on the second half of a back-to-back, but in this case, both sides were a problem for the Kraken. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken lose the second half of a back-to-back in DC against the Capitals, 4-1, with one of those being an empty netter, so you could maybe convince yourself it was a little bit closer than the first half, where they don't allow an empty netter. It was against a better team, but honestly, for most of the game, the Kraken didn't seem to be in it whatsoever. So the last one actually felt like a more even game. Yeah, this was just not Seattle's best. But before anybody gets too carried away with jumping on the team, well, I shouldn't say before, I'm sure people already have, but get too carried away certainly with jumping on them for losing another second half of a back-to-back after what happened last year with the 0 for 11 or 12, I honestly can't remember the exact number, but the 0 for a lot in second half of back-to-backs. Obviously, we're coming into this season really looking to win the first one in quite some time. This one, I think it would have been quite an upset for the Kraken to win this game for a number of reasons. One, the Capitals were, the more rested team. They hadn't played the night before, which, we're tired of that excuse, but it is part of it. But aside from that, even if the Capitals were coming on the second half of a back-to-back as well, it would have been a very tall order for the Kraken to win this game. For one, the Capitals are a better team playing better at the moment. They've gotten off to a better start to the season than the Kraken have, even with them having the best start to the season in franchise history coming into these last two games, which I think it still might be, or maybe we've fallen out of best start in franchise history, but it's still 3-2-2 is not a, it's not a fantastic record, but it's not a terrible record either. But this had, I think, a lot more to do with the fact that the Kraken were, even if healthy, slightly outmatched. Maybe even more than slightly outmatched by a Capitals team playing as well as they have to start the season. But then you throw in that the Kraken seemed to lose another player or two every single game. And that was the case coming into this one, as they'd already lost Montour and Gaudreau, then they lost McCann, and now Mason Marchment is out day-to-day with another, I think his was upper body injury, but another player out day-to-day, at least not headed to the IR, but the Kraken still missing McCann, still missing Montour, who at this point I would have to imagine is probably not going to be back with the team until they're back home. And yeah, still obviously Gaudreau on IR. They came into the season missing Riker Evans and Capo Caco. That health thing that I talked about at the start of the season, where the Kraken have been one of the healthier teams in the NHL over the last couple seasons, at least the early returns are that might be coming back the other way a little bit so far this season. And then you throw on top of all of that, the Kraken were also starting Matt Murray for the first time in the regular season. His first start as a Kraken and his first start in the NHL in over a year. He played the entire last season at the AHL level. Yeah, it was not a game the Kraken were particularly likely to win. It's still hockey. Anything could happen on any given night, but I was not expecting much out of this game, and the first two periods were maybe still a little bit worse than what I expected. And that's because as we get into the game with the only significant change in the lineup other than Murray in net instead of Decord or Grubauer, with Decord actually not even suited up for the night, so Grubauer's the suited up backup, but he never ends up playing. Other change being with, obviously, Marchment out, the Kraken then have to call up another guy from the AHL. In this case, it's Ben Myers. So the Seattle Firebirds are out there to start out this game, and they get off to, actually the first 5, 6, maybe even 7 minutes were okay. The Kraken got a little bit of pressure. There was some pressure back. It was a fairly evenly played, low-event game, like we've seen a lot of these Kraken games start, whether it's the Kraken with more possession or the other team. They don't really get off to very fast starts. Either way, it tends to be pretty low shooting for the first few minutes of the game. That was certainly the case in this one. But then once we got into the rhythm of the game, it was all Capitals. Pretty much literally all Capitals for almost the entirety of the first two periods. The Kraken are able, with some pretty decent goaltending from Murray. He wasn't a fantastic highlight reel goaltending out there, but I thought he turned in a pretty solid performance for the Kraken and certainly helped this game stay at least somewhat respectable on the scoreboard as the Capitals get the scoring started midway through the first period with Just a nice tic-tac-toe play down the Kraken end on a rush as they come into the offensive end. It's a puck along the boards that gets fed out across to the other side of the slot. A quick drag and then back to the other side on the back door. Two passes, tape to tape, and a tap in. It's 1-0 Caps with Dowd getting his first of the season. And for Murray, not much of anything he could do on this one. The Kraken just don't really help him out much defensively. Although they would be continued to be tested over the rest of the first period. Fortunately, Murray and the Kraken defense kept things a little bit more away from the net throughout the rest of the first period and were a little bit better on the back check, which helped, but Murray still had to come up with a save or two to get to the first frame with the Kraken still down just 1-0. Certainly not the best first period. The Kraken had gotten almost nothing going offensively. They had hardly any shots to show for it. I think it might have been 5 shots at the end of the first period. But it's still a 1-0 game, so as long as they come out to the second period, the first has not been their best period so far this season. So if they come out into the second where they've tended to look a lot better, it's just a 1-goal deficit. Anything could happen. One little bloop, a random bounce, and you got this game back evened up. But that was only something you could really think about for 25 seconds, I think it was, before the Capitals right into the offensive end. And it's a puck that gets down behind the Kraken net that then gets poked out of the feet of John Hayden before he can locate it out into the slot where Capitals player just kind of coasts in, grabs the puck, reaches out with a stick, pulls it to himself, and then quickly fires on net before Murray has a chance to fully react to it. Was it a savable shot? I think it was. He probably had enough time to at least have a chance, but it still would have been a pretty nice save. Either way, it's not made, and it's 2-0 Capitals, again, just 25 seconds into the second period. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, the Kraken send the Capitals immediately to a power play, which it takes them not quite halfway through, but about halfway through the power play, still just over a minute and a half into the second period as a whole. The Capitals win a faceoff in the Kraken end. Ovechkin gets it quickly out to Chychrun, and Chychrun fires off the quick shot. It's a full, across the ice, so it forces Murray to go from one side of his net to the other. He can't get to the other side in time. Again, maybe savable, but it would have taken a pretty nice save. Again, either way, it's not made, and the Capitals, just like that, have the 3-0 lead that it kind of felt like they could have had by the end of the first period. Just a minute and a half into the second, they have it anyway. And then, as far as fight back is concerned, well, we've seen the Kraken fight back pretty well, kind of aside from the last game against the Flyers. We've seen them fight back and stay in games so far this season. They've, traded goals throughout most of their first 5 games. It was goals back and forth. Often the Kraken would score the first one of the game, then allow a goal or two, but then score. They've never been even down 2 goals going into the game against the Flyers. Obviously that changed when they lost that game 5-2, but now they're down 3-0 and just nothing. No fight back. No real energy, certainly no cohesion, or looking like a team with a plan as far as transitioning the puck up the ice the other way. The Kraken are still having pretty much no luck offensively. We went from a first period where they had very few and far between chances, but a couple of chances that at least had some level of danger. Berkeley Catton had a chip on net from a tight angle, but at least in close. John Hayden actually made a pretty nice play to get a nice in-tight shot off. The second period, they get a few more shots on goal. I want to say 4 more shots on goal over the course of the second period, which is already not great. And then you throw in that any shots the Kraken were getting were from way outside, and most of them were getting blocked on the way, and any that made it to the net were very, very easy saves for Thompson to make. The Kraken get a little bit of a push towards the end of the second, but not much of anything. At least they are able to slow down the advance of the Capitals, who at this point I think were kind of content with just playing defense and not allowing the Kraken to do anything offensively, which they were very successful at doing. But we get to the end of the second with the Kraken still down 3-1. Wait, did I say 3-1? I meant 3-0. I don't know what I said. If I said 3-0, then you'll never have seen this. I would have cut it out. But if I said 3-1, I meant 3-0. Eventually it does become 3-1, as thankfully, finally, as we get into the third period, the Kraken show up, start to actually play some decent hockey, get a power play fairly early on in this period, and look fairly dangerous on the power play. A couple of good chances. They seem to really like this play where they go from up top down to Stevenson on one side, and then Stevenson goes all the way across to Newman for a one-timer, which nearly connected. Newman puts it off a crossbar. Then Catton had a pretty good look that he also puts off, or not the crossbar, the post, the near post. And then Catton had a similar look that he puts off the near post. So a couple of good chances for the Kraken. They aren't able to come up with the goal, though, until shortly after the power play comes to an end. The Kraken come into the offensive end. It's Ben Myers with the puck. He looks to make an impact in his first game with the Kraken this season. He, off of a change, enters the zone, gets the puck on his stick, fires it on net, or in the vague vicinity of the net anyway, from the high face-off circle, misses the net entirely, and really didn't even seem like it was particularly close, as it bounces off the glass, or end boards. I think it was off the glass. He missed it that bad, behind the net, but right out to Jaden Schwartz on the far side, who just kind of one-tap directs it back at the net, and this time into it. Really no chance for Thompson. Just a perfect bounce for the Kraken. Again, one of those where it could hardly have been a better tape-to-tape pass if Myers had planned it. I kind of doubt that he did, but if he did, it was a beautiful pass tape-to-tape off the end boards or glass to Schwartz as he gets that goal. I will say, I understand it had been a pretty frustrating game for the Kraken to this point, but it almost seemed like they had already accepted defeat at this point. The celebration of this goal, I get you're down 3-0 and haven't really shown any life to this point in the game, but maybe at least be a little bit excited about the goal. Don't just, have the type of celebration that you have when you're down 5-7-0 with 2 minutes left. The goal's completely meaningless other than just stats on the score sheet. There was no energy after the goal. It didn't really seem to be anything other than like, hey, I got a goal. Yeah, high fives. We're still going to lose anyway. I don't know. It's a small thing. And sure, they really didn't show that much life to that point, but at least act like you are still potentially in this game. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. It was just a little thing that kind of bothered me a bit, that it seemed like they had already accepted defeat the way that they celebrated the goal, which maybe I'm just reading into that too much, but it was just, I don't know. For whatever reason, maybe it's just because I was, after how this weekend has gone for Seattle sports, aside from the Seahawks, but maybe not in the best mindset, thinking a little bit more pessimistically than usual. Either way, the Kraken, in spite of Schwartz's attitude after scoring the goal, do actually push back pretty well throughout the rest of this period. They get another power play, which again has another couple of good chances. This might have been the one where they had the 2 post hits, actually, now that I think about it. But they still had a couple of good chances on the first power play, just didn't score. Then the second one, I think, is the one where they actually get both Newman and Catton to hit the post. Neither of them obviously able to score, since the Kraken would only get 1 goal, as you saw at the beginning of the video. But a couple pretty good chances. They, even at 5-on-5, got another good look or 2. Obviously, Thompson's still playing well and making save after save. He had one absolute robbery of Jordan Eberle with a nice play from Catton to get the puck up towards the net, and then a quick pass across to Eberle as he streaks in to the far side. Eberle with a good shot off. Maybe could have put it a little bit closer to the post, but it's just, again, it's just an inch away from being in the back of the net, as Thompson, going full splits to get his foot out to the far side, is able to get just the toe of his skate out far enough to get just enough of this puck to send it off of the post and out to the far side. Talk about fractions of an inch, fractions of a second difference, and this is a 2-3 game with still a few minutes left in it for the Kraken to try to even things up and send it to overtime. But that was kind of the theme of how the Kraken chances would go after Schwartz scored his goal. They got that one nice, fortunate bounce for Schwartz to at least break up the shutout. But then, while they were at least forcing rebounds off of Thompson and getting guys towards the net, Tolvanen had one just go past his stick that if that gets there, it's on his blade and into the net. There's a couple other chances where a puck just bounces over a stick off of a rebound that would have been an easy goal. I think Newman had one bounce over his stick as he tried to shoot a rebound shot in that would have been an easy one. But the Kraken just couldn't get one more bounce, aren't able to get on the scoreboard again, and eventually they go empty net. Never really make much of anything happen with the empty net. Eventually it is hit to give us that 4-1 final score. The Kraken, in the end, I think we're only credited with 16 shots on goal, which, let me double check. Okay, nope, never mind. Sorry, the official scoring by the end of it has the Kraken at 19 shots on goal, which at least saves them from having the fewest shots on goal in a single game in franchise history. I'm pretty sure that record is still set at 17, which they've done 3 times. but they're able to, I guess, get up to 19 as they go back and tally up the shots at the end just to make sure all the stats there are as good as they can get them, I suppose. And that's not counting all the ones that went off of the posts and the crossbar and stuff, which the Kraken did have a few of those. Though, to be fair, there was a lot of plumbing being hit at the other end of the ice as well. Murray getting some help from the red pipes around him, so it's not like the Kraken were the only team just missing extra goals. But yeah, for this one, the Kraken just don't come out with much of a fight in the first 40 minutes, at least the first kind of 38 minutes. They had a little bit of a push in the second to start to get that momentum going that they picked up in the third. But even then, the momentum that they got in the third, while it was there at times, it still wasn't consistent enough to get this comeback at least across the finish line or even the next step closer to it. Now, again, like I said at the beginning, this was not a game that I ever expected the Kraken to win. So what is essentially a 3-1 game really isn't that bad. What makes this feel a little bit more disappointing is more just how we got to the 3-1 score. The Kraken looking, I mean, completely useless offensively for the vast majority of the game. It was kind of frustrating to watch. At least I suppose if you're going to have one period of offense, having it be the third is, I mean, it makes it a little bit more exciting if you haven't already turned off the game at that point, which, to be fair, given I think where a lot of people are at with Seattle sports right now, you probably did turn it off by the point where you're, most of the way through the second period and the Kraken look completely lifeless. But if you did keep the game on, the Kraken at least played a decent, respectable third period. Still, they're pretty depleted from injuries, missing, I mean, as they pointed out on the broadcast, by the time they were on the power play, they were missing almost a full power play unit worth of players with McCann, Kakko. I mean, either Montour or Evans have both. I mean, Montour obviously would be quarterbacking a power play. Evans has done it before. And you got, just a whole host of players that are at Marchment on the power play as well. So you have already there 4 guys, and then, I mean, you're not going to run 2 defensemen on a power play, but you have 5 guys that have been a part of Kraken power plays before that are out. I mean, 2 of them you've had out since the start of the season, but it's still not an ideal place to be. Injuries happen throughout the season. This is, I mean, plenty of teams have been at this point. Some teams have more significant injuries. Obviously, Florida's missing Matthew Tkachuk. The Senators were missing Brady Tkachuk when the Kraken played them. There's injuries happen all the time, even at the start of the season. Players come into the season with injuries, but the Kraken losing a player a game is not necessarily the rate you want to be at when you're coming into the tail end of the longest road trip of the season, I'm pretty sure, at least tied for it. 6-game road trip here in the early part of the season. You got a back-to-back towards the end of it, and you're, losing a player game is not the best spot to be. Would have been nice, though, if they could have showed a little bit more fight and at least some amount of cohesion getting through the neutral zone in offensive transition before the third period. I mean, you want to talk about them getting nothing done offensively. This is what their stat card, again, the advanced stat model from Dom Decision, this is what it looks like for the Kraken after the game. The teal colors, those are offense, and the purple colors, those are defense. So actually a fairly decent overall defensive game from the Kraken in this one, but that's a lot of teal in the negative. So, yeah. On the bright side, though, there were still a couple of good things from this game. The young players, I thought, played pretty well, or most of them anyway. Beniers had a fairly decent game. Catton, I thought, looked quite good. Newman looked pretty good in this game. Still just missing on that power play shot. The power play still looked dangerous, even against a good Capitals team. They weren't able to score for the first time in a few games now, but they almost scored, and they got enough pressure there to lead to that first and only goal for the Kraken, that first power play for them. While it didn't score, it did lead to the pressure that led to the goal, so kind of indirect there, if you will. Power play, certainly early returns is much improved from anything we've seen from a Kraken power play. Now this has to keep up. We've seen Kraken power plays go through maybe a month stretch of looking like a respectable power play, and then they become completely useless immediately afterwards. So save judgment on saying that it's fixed until we've gotten maybe a month or 2 into the season and they're still somewhere around the middle of the pack or higher in the NHL standings. But for now, it's at least a power play again that it goes out there and it looks like they have a plan and they look dangerous and at least get one good scoring shot on most of their chances on the power play. And one last time, for what it's worth, again, I thought Murray looked decent in net, at least plenty good enough for a backup performance. I don't think you'd feel particularly good if that was your starting goaltender. Fortunately for the Kraken, he isn't, and hopefully we don't have to see too much of Murray or Grubauer other than just to spell Decord occasionally throughout the season and obviously play second half of back-to-backs, which there are plenty of as the season goes along. But he at least played well enough to be a serviceable backup, and if Decord has anywhere near the season he did last year, and you have a backup that can at least keep you around 500 when they're in, then that already improves the Kraken from where they were at last season. Finally, though, as always, we'll close this one out with the Kraken 3 stars, as always brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide 3 stars after any regular season or playoff games the Kraken play, you can help decide those by going to the link down below and heading over to support on Patreon as well. For this game, the only person mentioned over on Patreon, again by Chris, was it was Jaden Schwartz with the goal, a fairly obvious one there. He at least prevents the shutout. Had a decent game otherwise. Again, there's not that much offense to speak of, and most of the team played pretty well defensively, so nothing catastrophic either way. I am going to throw in a second star. I don't know if I really want to put a third out there for this one, but a second star in this one, I'll go with Berkeley Catton. I think he played a very good game, again, for a young player. Didn't really make any big mistakes that I saw. Sure, there's a few moments where he's a little overwhelmed. Again, got shoved off the puck once or twice, but didn't make any giant mistakes. No big defensive zone turnovers or turnovers really in transition either. Had a couple of actually pretty decent defensive zone steals to get the Kraken going back the other way. Had a couple nice passes in transition into the offensive end that set up a couple of the better scoring opportunities for the Kraken in this game. Had the one shot off of the post. I think it might have been just at the end of the second power play or maybe just after it ended. Either way, I thought Catton had another pretty solid game, so I'll throw him a second star. Largely, again, for, contributing offensively, but also having a good defensive game, which has, I think, more been the early concern with him, is whether or not that defensive side of the game is enough there yet, those instincts are enough there yet to allow him to be able to play consistent NHL minutes. And at least for this game, I thought he looked like he belonged and played well enough, I would say, to earn a star. So we'll go with those two, Schwartz and Catton, as the 2 stars. Ben Myers played a pretty good game. I thought Alexiak had a decent game. Again, I already talked about Murray a couple times. There's other guys, if you want to throw in a third star, I wouldn't blame you. Let me know down in the comments if there's a third star you want to throw in. Beniers also had a decent enough game. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought of this one. And unfortunately, this is not the second half of a back-to-back that's going to break the curse or the streak or whatever you want to call it. But it was never particularly likely this was going to be the one to start with. So until next time, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless and go Kraken.